Major funding for these broadcasts is made possible by grants from Chase Commercial Term Lending and New York Community Bank, M&T Bank, Perfect Building Maintenance, Capital One Bank, the Wichthoff Group, Greenberg Traurig. Additional funding is provided by grants from AKA Hotels, Corman Communities, Aerial Property Advisors, AVR Realty Company, Bank of America Merrill Lynch, Bank Leumi USA, Briarwood Organization, CBRE, Citizens Bank, Colliers International NYC, CPEX Real Estate Services, Cushman & Wakefield, Customers Bank, DDG, Dime Savings Bank of Williamsburg, Douglaston Development Levine Builders, Fisher Brothers, First Nationwide Title Agency, Flushing Bank, Foley & Lardner, Friedman LLP, Handler Real Estate Organization, HAP Investment Developers, Herrick Feinstein, Investors Bank, James D. Kuhn Real Estate Institute at Syracuse University, James Orphanides, Chairman USRealty.com, John Katsimides, Red Apple Group, Kilroy Architectural Windows, New York's Window Company, Madison Realty Capital, Massey Knuckle Realty Services, Matone Group, Mercantile Commerce Bank, Meridian Capital Group, Newmark Grubb Knight Frank, New Banks, MHP Real Estate Services, People's United Bank, SJP Properties, Sterling National Bank, Sterling Risk, Stonehenge Partners, TD Bank, Terra CRG, The Continuum Company, CUNY TV Foundation, the Moynihan Group, Urban American, and These Friends.
He's a kid. He's a kid who started, on the Yiddish theater. He tried then to become a furrier, but that wasn't it. Then he tried to become a comedian. Did okay on that. Then, there was this show. There's this, after traveling to Pittsburgh, Cleveland, other fakakta places, there was this show that they needed somebody to be the innkeeper, and he became the innkeeper, and he had, he kept the job for a long time, like 12 years, in Fiddler on the Roof. Innkeeper, Laser Wolf, and then Tevye. What do you do next? Do some movies. From movies, you become a TV star. Then, at the age of 91, he says, "I'm going to be a cabaret star." And he's here today, the legendary Yiddish theater, the legendary actor, Emmy Award winner, Obie. Fyvush Finkel, thanks for being here.
It's my honor to be here.
So let's talk about your parents, okay? You told me that one came from Minsk.
My mother came from Minsk, and my father from Warsaw.
And any idea how your mother met your father?
It was arranged.
Oh, it was
in those days, they arranged marriages. Nobody...
Wait a second, but it was in America.
Even in America, they arranged it.
So who was the matchmaker? Who was...
The relatives used to do that.
They get married, and then they move to Brownsville?
First of all, they get acquainted.
Oh, okay.
They get introduced together. They started going out, and then eventually they get married, but it was all arranged. The meeting was arranged.
And when your mother and father got married, which happens to be probably in the late 1910s.
In the 1900s,
1900s. What was your dad doing at that time?
Oh, he was, the industry he followed, he was a paper box maker.
Okay, the corrugated box.
That's right, yeah.
Rest of the country. So he was in the corrugated box, and you were born in 1922 in Brownsville.
That's right. I was the third one born. There was 4 sons they had.
So how do you get over there in Brownsville? How do you get to work in the Yiddish theater at 8 years of age? I know you were a child prodigy, but how do you get into the Yiddish theater?
Well, it was a thing that happened. We lived that time in Brownsville. I mean, on Dumont Avenue, my father had his store of dry goods where we lived at the back of the store. And he used to get the Forvitz, the Jewish newspaper, every day. And he read an article in there that they're looking in the Yiddish theater, which was 4 blocks away from where we lived, called the Hopkinson Theater. and they're looking for a boy of 9 or 10 years old that knows the song "Oh Promise Me" for a wedding sequence that they have on the stage. And I knew the song.
You audition?
Sure, I auditioned.
Okay, so they hired you. Now you said to me,
I auditioned. I had about 10 boys there.
what's interesting is they pay you $1,
$1 a night.
$1 a night, and then since Saturday they had 2 shows. You made $8 a week.
I made $8 a week. I was the prince of the family.
I mean, you were
With
making more than
$8.
your father was making in the back room of
Yeah.
living over there. So you're doing that for a couple years, okay? You're 8, 9 years of age, and what happens at 15?
Well, I was a child actor then. I was a child actor, and I did a lot of shows those days. I went to a school for that.
Really?
Yes, certainly. It was a lady that coached us.
In Brownsville?
No, she was in New York. I had to take the subway to her studio on St. Mark's Place in the East Side, and she taught us that. Not only myself, Herschel Bernardi, should rest in peace, was with the same class as I was.
These were for Yiddish actors, or for...
She taught us the correct Yiddish, dancing, singing, acting, everything. $1 a week she charged.
Yeah, but you were making $8 a week on the Yiddish.
Yeah,
theaters.
but she supplied the children for any show downtown in the Yiddish theater that needed a child that could do all those things.
Where did you perform?
Oh, we had at that time it was a big industry, the Yiddish theater. In other words, we had in Brooklyn alone 4 of them.
And then you had the famous one on 2nd Avenue.
And 2nd Avenue too.
So what happens? Your voice changes when you're like...
When I was 15, the voice changed, certainly. They told me not to sing anymore, otherwise I might ruin the second voice that's going to come down. You know, for a grown-up man, might be a tenor, might be a baritone. You can't tell, actually, till it happens. So I got a baritone. I was a baritone. I still am, thank God.
Now, where'd you go to school at this time?
Oh, I went to a vocational high school to learn a trade.
Right, that's, what, you're 14, 15 at this time?
That's right.
So your father says, you know, God forbid, acting doesn't work. I mean, it's last...
Yeah, I should have a trade.
You should have a trade.
In those days, a furrier was a good trade. It was a very popular industry in those days.
And so you go to vocational school.
For 3 years I went, like a regular high school. I graduated.
And now you're 18 years of age.
I was close to 18 that time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now you're still working part-time in the Yiddish theater?
No, I didn't work in a theater at all then.
So you gave up the theater?
I couldn't do it. I was afraid to do it because of voice.
Of your baritone voice?
Yeah, so when I went to work as a furrier, and it didn't last long.
Let's talk. It's such an interesting story about, it was your father's brother.
No, a cousin.
A cousin. And what was
If it would be a brother, he would never have done what a cousin did.
What happens?
Well, he told my father he'll give me a job. I went to visit him, and they were very good friends then. And the wind-up was, he says to me...
He wants you to practice.
He wants me to be a nailer. That's the lowest form of a furrier. He takes the skin on a pattern and nails it. Then he cuts it around to fit the pattern. A real furrier wouldn't want to do that.
So then he says...
Then I told him I'm an operator. And I have high honors here, and I showed him my credentials, how I graduated as an operator with high honors. So he smiled. He says, good, good. Make me a muff. In those days, the women wore muffs. So I made him a muff, and a half hour later, he looks at the muff, opened the door, and threw me out bodily. He says, you ruined me $400. What's the matter with you? And all that stuff. He started to curse me and everything and threw me out bodily. Then he got my father on the phone. And then, don't forget, in Yiddish, it was stronger. He said to him, all the furriers in the world, and you sent Fyvush to me, he ruined me. And my father told him to go to hell. And they either go to hell here and go to hell there. And they stopped talking for life. Okay. They wouldn't talk to each other.
So now, Okay, so the baritone, what do you do now? You're 18
Well,
years of age.
I figured, well, in that case, I see that I'm not a smash hit as a furrier. Maybe I'll become an actor again. Of course, I still had my things about me, dancing, singing, you know. I was funny. I could tell a story. I could tell a joke. So those days, the Hebrew Actors Union wouldn't allow me. I was not a union man. They would only allow their members. It was a closed shop. So, but there was one opening in Pittsburgh,
Pittsburgh. Had you ever been?
1940-41.
So had you ever been to Pittsburgh? I mean,
No.
At that time, you might have been to Lakewood. You may have been to the Catskills.
Well, Lakewood was something else. I made money performing in Lakewood.
Right.
In Lakewood, I did those days, it was known as a single. Today, they call it a stand-up.
So you were stand-up in...
Yeah, Lakewood. They had 40 hotels there. And I appeared in every one of them.
You go to Pittsburgh.
Yes.
And now Pittsburgh was how long of a run?
I was there for, well, we played every week a different show there. It was a good school for me.
All in Yiddish.
All in Yiddish, yeah.
There were enough people over there?
Oh, they had a lot of Yiddish people there. We were there for 38 weeks.
Now, you told me you were paid what? How much?
No, that was on a cooperative plan. They pay off at the end of the week all their expenses, and the money that's left over, they divide amongst the actors.
Was it profitable?
No, not at the
That's
beginning,
okay.
no.
Right.
If my father didn't send me money, I could never stay there.
So then you come back from Pittsburgh,
Yes.
and you're still not in the union.
No, they wouldn't let me perform in New York.
And then you find the garden spot of the world, Cleveland.
Cleveland, yes.
So Cleveland, what happens in Cleveland?
Well, at Cleveland, we had a guarantee. The owner of that theater guaranteed the actors $20 a week, 1941-42 that season. And I took it anyway. I mean, what have I got to lose? I was a youngster then, even then. And in Cleveland, they were using stars of the Yiddish theater to as guests
You mean
for a
like
couple of
Molly
weeks.
Pecan and
All of them, yeah. But Molly Pecan was not there at the time, but the others were there. And I figured it would be a great experience for me, you know, to learn from them a thing or two. You know, I always was observant.
So you're there for how long in
Also about 36, 38 weeks.
Okay, so it's 38 weeks. Cleveland ends. You come back, but at this time, your father and mother had moved from Brownsville to Crown Heights, right?
Right.
And in Crown Heights, your father became a true Jew. He became a doctor, a shirt doctor,
He opened a shirt hospital.
a shirt hospital.
Because of the Second World War, you couldn't get broadcloth. The Army confiscated the broadcloth. So if you had a shirt with a rubbed out collar, he used to take it out and turn it around, and it looked brand new when he sewed it back, you know.
Now, also over here, like similar to the days in Brownsville, the shirt hospital was in the front, and the family
lived in the back.
Lived in the back, so
Yeah.
Accommodating all.
We
of
lived
this.
in the back. And, well, listen, we were four boys then. What happened next was very difficult. They wouldn't allow me to perform in New York, the union. They were very mean to me, too, you know. They claimed we have actors, they got to work, you don't have to, blah, blah,
But
blah.
somebody liked you, right? You were lucky. Somebody wanted to.
They had an opening in Boston. The star that is going to appear in Boston couldn't get an actor. Everybody turned him down because of the money that he could afford for an actor to do a certain part in Boston. So they told him, get Fyvush. He's going to do it. You know, I said, certainly I'll do it. I don't care about the money. I didn't care.
So you go to Boston.
I got to Boston and I killed the audience. They screamed with laughter as soon as they looked at me. And he was so impressed. He was a fine actor, too, a fine star of the Yiddish theater. Pesach Borstein was his name.
So after Boston, what happens next?
Well, he claimed that he took the theater for the next season.
He's now coming back to
Oh,
Brownsville.
he comes back to New
comes
York, naturally.
Okay.
Boston was only for the weekend.
And what happens? Because it's a
Well,
great
they told
story.
him, no, he can't hire me. They told him, and that's it. And he got aggravated because of that. The author of the play he wrote the part for me. Because he was also in Boston. He saw what happened. So the union said no and no and no and no. And he got wind of it, that they had a meeting, a big meeting at the Central Plaza. They had a meeting. Now it's a college. But then they had a hall there where they held the meetings. And he grabbed me. I was in the street. He grabbed me. He says, come with me. And I said, where? He says, come with me. What do you care? I came with him. He went right to the meeting, and in the middle of this session, he started to yell out. He interrupted them. Very briefly and rudely, he interrupted them. He said, I need a 20-year-old actor that could sing, that can dance, that could be funny without a wig.
Now, for my audience, you explained that all the actors were older, and they were putting wigs on to look younger. Because
That's right, yeah.
They wanted to control the
And
work.
in those days, the toupee didn't look like it looks now, you know. Well, at any rate, he says, why is it so quiet here? Do you have any? And not an answer, not a word, not a whisper or anything. So he got up, their general manager, and he said, you can have him for 1 season, and that's all. He said, okay, 1 season. I stayed for 3 seasons.
So this is in 1942,
42, 43, and 44.
So you only work in the Yiddish theater, or are you also doing the Catskills and
I did them all.
at the same time?
Summertime, I did the Catskills. I did the wintertime. When I wasn't in the theater, I did Lakewood.
Now, so we were talking about
Miami wasn't popular then.
Now, but the Laurel and the Pines was the
Laurel and the Pines. I did that hotel. I performed there. I performed in almost every hotel they had there.
Now,
They had big ones and small ones.
so
I did them all.
You were doing both comedy and
Comedy,
and singing.
Stories. I did stories and sang comedy songs.
So, like, what stories did you do?
I did family stories. I did a lot of things, and I sang comedy songs, and that was very popular then, what I did.
So it's 1945, 46, and one day you're on the subway? What happens?
A girl came over to me, and if I knew where the Hotel Astor was, I said,
Now, she was from Rochester? You said?
she was from Rochester, New York. So I said, oh, as a matter of fact, I'm going there now. Because under the hotel, they had the Walgreens. The drugstore was a coffee shop, everything combined, and all the actors hung out there. So I hung out there too for laughs. I said, we'll go for coffee and then you're on your way, I told her. Fine. And 2 weeks later, we were engaged to be married.
No shidduch?
Huh? No shidduch of anything. We corresponded and everything. Well, I took her number. She took my number. And her family didn't even know what I did for a living, you see. And the funny part was that her father was very adamant when he found out that I was an actor. And then I used that gag in all my appearances. I told him, I'd like to marry your daughter. He says, never. I will not allow my daughter to marry an actor. I says, what are you talking about? You're talking to Fyvush Finkel. He says, I don't care who you are. My daughter will not marry an actor. I will not permit it. I said, well, why don't you come and see me first and then give her an opinion? I said, look, I'm appearing at the National Theater, and please come down. Maybe after you see what I do on that stage, you might think differently. He says, I'll be there. I told him when and where, and he came and he sat down just like my friend sitting over here. And when I saw him, I gave him everything I had. I danced, I sang that night, I told jokes. And
You were auditioning for your father-in-law.
That's right, yeah, actually. And right after the show, he came with a big smile to me. Oh, Fyvush, congratulations. You can marry my daughter. You're no actor. It is a true story. It struck me so funny that I tell it everywhere I go.
It's a great story.
That story, and they laugh.
So it's 1947, and, you and your wife are married. A couple of years later, you have Elliot and Ian.
That's right.
But the Yiddish theater is not growing at that time.
No, it's starting to shrink a little.
It's starting to shrink. The Hopkinson Avenue you didn't have 4 more Yiddish
Well,
theaters in
Hopkinson Avenue existed in the 50s. They tried everything. When I started there, they had on radio EVD a soap opera called Who Is Guilty, and it was so popular that they bought the rights to it, and the author wrote it as a musical, you see, and the line was all the way around the block to go in and see that show. It lasted over a year, that show, and a year in the Yiddish theater was a lot of time.
But to supplement your income at this time, you were doing weddings.
I did weddings and bar mitzvahs. I performed.
Because at that time, as opposed to today, it's even bands have been taken out.
No, they got disc jockeys now.
Disc jockeys, right?
Yeah.
DJs. But at that time, the comedian was over there. The comedian, and you were a multi-purpose comedian. You were a comedian. You were a singer.
I was always hired not by the people that were involved or getting married. The caterer hired me, because he must have had in their contract that he supplies everything. So what the price was for the bride and groom or the father of the bride and groom or whatever.
So when's in the 50s, when does the Yiddish theater really lose its prominence?
Well, I'll tell you, when I started, it was 45 weeks a season. And as time went by, it went 35 weeks. 1964 was the last time I appeared in the Yiddish theater officially. That time was 14 weeks.
So it was down to 14 weeks.
It was down to 14 weeks. Our people that used to go moved out of the neighborhoods. They went to Miami.
So during this period of time, you're still you have a family to support.
Oh, certainly.
So
the boys have to go to college.
Right.
They got a lot of, they went to a music college. They got a lot of scholarships, but there was still money that had to be spent for them. And that's what we did there. And thank God they're doing very well.
So what happens in the 60s?
Well, the 60s, 64 was the last time I played in the theater. But however, an actor that was playing in Fiddler on Broadway, his name was Sri Schooler, and he called me up in my house. I never met him before. I knew who he was, but I never met him real personally, He says, how would you like to appear in Fiddler on the Roof in their first national company?
So Fiddler, what, opens up in 62 or 64?
It opened in 64.
Okay, and when
This is 65.
65.
Yeah. I said I'd leap for a thing like that.
Had you seen the show?
I didn't see it, no. You couldn't see it. It was sold out completely. It was the biggest ticket demand on Broadway.
The national tour is going to start right now.
That's right.
And there's a job for the role of the innkeeper. What was the role of the innkeeper? I remember
the innkeeper, in Yiddish, it's called a batchen. A batchen is the grandfather of master ceremonies. In other words, at a wedding, he used to go and entertain on weddings, the innkeeper. His side job was the old master ceremonies, the batchen.
Okay, so
and he only really made money. He only made money when he mentioned names. If he mentioned this man's name, he'd get a tip. The other one, he'd get a tip, And he had rhyming prepared for the bride and groom in rhyme. And that went on even till today. You go to very religious weddings, they still have one.
They have the.
There might be maybe.
See, because when somebody hears the
throughout
word,
the world, 3 or 4 of them.
They read your bio and they say the innkeeper, they think the person is the man who's selling the schnapps.
That's right. He did also, but
so he had a multi-purpose.
He even made an extra $1 doing to be the master ceremonies at weddings.
So tell me about the audition for the innkeeper.
Oh, that was a tough audition. I went to the first audition in front of the casting director. As I'm lucky that Jerome Robbins' assistant was sitting at the table with us, and as I'm doing it, she says, "Oh my God, he's from Brooklyn." So he said, "Very good." He got mad at her. He said, "Very good. Zero Mostella's from Harvard, isn't he?"
Right.
So I said, "Well, what do you?" He yelled to me, "Read!" He got me nervous by yelling at me to read. I read. Then he said, now make the appointment for the audition.
So
she made the appointment for Friday, 10 in the morning. Hundreds of actors were there. I never saw anything like it in my life. Hundreds of actors, all auditioning for various parts and things. And she never called me. She made me wait. I couldn't even go out for coffee because I was afraid I'd lose my turn.
Lose your spot, right?
Yeah. Finally, I'm the only one left.
To be auditioned.
At the auditioning. She did it on purpose, you see. She didn't want me at all.
So who's at the audition? Robbins at this time? Or
He was there, Robbins. That was the last auditioning. So she said to me, you'll have to come back Monday. I said, if I don't audition today, it's Friday. I've been here since 10 in the morning. It's 3 o'clock in the afternoon now. I will never return. You could take this show and shove it, I told her, in plain English. So she said, wait a minute. Nobody ever talked to me that way. I said, well, it's always a first time. And she ran on the stage, Mr. Robbins, there's only one actor left. And he says, but I don't feel well now. I'm tired for the day. But he said he'll never come back if he doesn't audition now. P.S. He said, what's his name? He says, his name is Fyvush Finkel. He started to laugh. He said, any actor with a name like that, I got to see. I went on and I did the thing that I was coached. And they were laughing, everybody. And I was wondering, what in the world are they laughing about? I got mad. I got home. I called my friend, the actor that recommended me. What kind of people are they? I'm an artist. I showed him my thing, and they started laughing. Shame on them, I yelled at him. He says, stop talking already. They told me you got it.
Okay. And with that comment, we're going to wait till next week to complete the second part of this interview.
Oh, my God.
Because we purposely got you hired for
Oh,
the
my
theater.
God, I've been re-engaged.
You've been re-engaged.
I'm a re-engaged man.
You made the show without the union.
That's it.
So I'll
Hooray.
see you next week.
Very good. I'll be here and I'll be honored.
Okay.